Hey everyone, after a couple weeks off, we are back again in Berlin Noir, and for this week's episode, we're going to be starting off here today by revisiting Potsdamer Platz to build one particular building, and that is this thing here, the Haus Vaterland, or the Fatherland House in English, and this was a very iconic, very significant building here in Potsdamer Platz, and something that I didn't include the very first time I built this area, which was all the way back in the fifth or sixth episode, I believe, so pretty early in the series. But I never built it back then for, I guess, two main reasons. One being I didn't really recognize that it was a fairly significant, important building. I mean, just looking at an aerial view, it's a fairly narrow building. I mean, you can see it's rounded in the front, obviously, but I mean, it doesn't appear as though it's, just important from above. But that's why, looking from an aerial view is quite limiting. But once I actually figured out that it was actually a pretty significant building and pretty important to this area and just the history of Berlin during this time, I couldn't really find any building that, I could really use to fit in here, since given its rounded spherical front and also this large green dome on top, there's really nothing on the workshop, or at least there's probably something modern perhaps that that resembles the rounded front, but nothing that I actually could have used for this. And that was until Jens released this building a little while ago. It's one of the newer ones, but it's still several months old nonetheless. But I remember when it first came out, I was like, this is like an ideal building that I could use for this, but unfortunately it's just one-sided, so I couldn't really make it rounded in the front until I discovered something in procedural objects, which has been there for some time, I'm guessing. I don't know how long, but I never actually noticed it, and that's you can flip around any building, any prop, whatever you want, on any of the three axes in game. So that's what I did at the very, very start of this episode, how I just converted the building to procedural objects, and then I think flipped it on the x-axis, I believe. But in doing so, you can get the effect of, completing that rounded front. And someone also on, I believe it is my Discord, pointed out to me that you have to reset the normals, or basically so the shadows don't get all screwed up, which I didn't know about that until you let me know, so thank you very much for that. But as you can see, it makes a pretty decently rounded front, and I continued with the same facade, the building all the way down. I guess the long flat part of the building, which isn't the real life building was kind of not layered, but it had a couple different, I guess I'll call it layers on the side, different levels that kind of stuck out and then went in as you went up with each story. So with this, you only really have, I guess you have that kind of little deck area that kind of sticks out on each little thing. So I mean, it's not entirely exactly how it was, but I definitely wanted to continue with the same facade, the same texture, the same colors, since I think it looks a whole lot better. But and then I also used some other assets. I think one of the, I think it was the building for the, I don't know what it functions as now, but I believe it was the old state house or the city hall for West Berlin, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what it's used as now, but it's somewhere close to Alexanderplatz. But yeah, I used that just to PO the building so I could get the dome on top, which, I mean, doesn't fit, of course, perfectly on top, since it doesn't have the exact same sides or number of sides and the same size of those sides. So, it's not perfect, but I think from a distance, it looks definitely pretty nice. And I also added that little section there, little, I guess, side entrance, just to try and add a little more something to the side of the building there, since, like I said, it was kind of layered as you went up with each story. It kind of went a little more fancier than this actual asset is, so I wanted to add something a little more there. So I added that building and then made it a little darker so it kind of blended into the texture and color of this building a little better. And then one thing that this asset is missing out on is these very large grand arches, which were very prominent. You could see them. They're very tall, like I said, very grand arches that were right at the bottom here that went around the circular part of this building, and I think continued all the way down. I'm not sure, but they were definitely right around here. So underneath these little props I'm placing here were these large arches, which I tried putting some arches from some other props that I had, but I mean, I probably could have done it, but it would have taken a very, very, very long time. So I just figured I'd cover up or add a little detail with those awnings sticking out, just so, you know, the building isn't so generic, since, I mean, this asset is fairly generic. You know, it's especially considering how, you know, significant and fancy this building was back then. But I also added these little statues here, since there were little marble-looking statues that lined the top where I placed these. They were all different in real life, but you know, I just used the same one and spaced them every other rather than every little you know, area there. It's just since, like I said, since they are the exact same assets, I don't want it to look too repetitive there, but I did want to add something there, since it does definitely add something that's needed there to add a little more detail to it. But I'm definitely glad I was able to add this building here, since it was so important back then, especially considering what it is now. I mean, objectively, as you can see, it's not a, I guess, bad, ugly building, but considering what it replaced and what it used to be, you know, it's obviously a big step down. But so now, I guess moving on from that, we got some more pictures and screenshots from you guys, and today we're going to be starting out with some photos by Jade from Discord, and we got a nice just rural American looking landscape. I love the, you know, kind of sunset feel to it, with the kind of silhouette of the water tower and stuff in the background. And then this one here, I just absolutely love the detail of the grass with the cornfields and the dead grass kind of on the left side that's a little overgrown compared to the stuff on the right. And of course the cube map, you know, when it comes to our building our cities here, the cube maps make a big difference. They can make or break your city, so definitely excellent choice there as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Jade, for sharing your photos with me on Discord. And I will have someone else's screenshots, or one screenshot a little bit later. But if you are interested in sharing your own city screenshots, then definitely join my Discord. It's for free, of course. There is a link in the description, and you can, you know, chat with a bunch of other people interested in this game that we all love, and share some photos if you want to see me, you know, share them off and show them off in game. And yeah, so definitely check that out in the description. But so I just realized I had my ceiling fan on, so hopefully you guys didn't hear that humming in the background. I mean, unless you have headphones or earbuds, I'm guessing you didn't. But yeah, it gets hot, and, you know, living in Arizona, it's only 100 outside right now, I think, but definitely toasty indoors still. So yeah, hopefully you guys didn't hear that, but if you did, sorry about that. I'll try to remember next time. Yeah, I didn't even notice it, since, you know, I only had my fan off now for a couple minutes and I'm already roasting. But anyways, so once again, we will have one more picture here from you guys, another screenshot, and this one is from Rostis, someone else from Discord, and it's a lovely little kind of rural English town, I believe is what you said, from one of your projects. And it's just a nice T intersection there. I love the sign placement, and also the grass along the street and those little tufts, you know, making it look a little wild, more rural. It looks really nice. One thing I would recommend is to mess around with like an LUT or your lighting settings, just to kind of brighten things up a bit. I mean, this was just, you know, like the auto settings from Google Photos, just to kind of bring it to life a tad bit more, since I'm one that loves my game a lot brighter than I think most do, so I'm probably a little biased, I guess. But I do think experimenting with some, you know, different LUTs, lighting settings, so even if you want to keep it darker, just to bring out some of those colors and details a bit more, you know, your cities will definitely benefit. I mean, personally, I'm always tinkering with LUT settings, so I think, regardless of, even if you think you have the best thing available, I would always suggest just, experimenting, because you'll always find new things, and sometimes you'll find something you like better. But so now we're on to the second half of today's episode, and that is revisiting, and I guess really an area I haven't touched in quite some time, and that's this area here along the Under Linden Avenue. And we're going to be building the Babelplatz there and the Neue Wache. And with the plaza here, we have this curved building here, which I'm not sure what it was back then. Today it's a building. I'm not sure if it's either a library or a law building, or perhaps both, but a part of the Humboldt University, which is right across the street from it. And then also the State Opera House, which is the other building there. But I use this for I'll just call it the library. But it's like the only building that I'm subscribed to, I think, that has that kind of curved front. And since the building in real life does have that, I pretty much had to use it. Since it's also a really, really nice asset. It's also a newer one, only several weeks old out in the workshop. But it almost fit perfectly in there. So close. I had to, as you saw, move the one street down ever so slightly, which is fine. I mean, the block directly south of this area is temporary, all those buildings there, since there is a church there, which is very unique. It has a turquoise-ish colored large dome, more or less, which does go there. I can't think of any asset that really looks like that. I could be wrong. If you can think of an asset, I'll throw a picture up of the actual church there, since I don't want to put something there and have to rebuild it all later, or redo the rows and stuff as I'm doing now. So I'm just going to leave that block there as it is, just plain, not really detailed or anything too much, just as a placeholder until, an asset comes out either of that building or something that resembles it somewhat closely. But anyways, so for this plaza here, it is pretty simple. From the aerial view that I showed up a second ago, it just seemed to have, I don't know if it was a road or I guess a walkway or path. I'm guessing just a simple little narrow road like this that kind of went in like this and just looped around in the plaza here. But this plaza is one of the I guess infamous locations of one of the first book burnings in the early 30s under the National Socialists. This was one of the most infamous locations for that. Of course, that was sometimes later, so I'm not sure, what the plaza looked over the course of its history. I mean, looking at the plaza today, it seems still rather simple, not too much going on. I know there's a memorial or some sort of monument, or not a monument, but something in remembrance of the book burning and everything going on with that back then. But for now, I just kept it very, very plain. I didn't really put anything. I did go back later and add some bollards and just some simple wear decals just to make it look a little less plain, but I still kept it very simple. And so what I'm doing here is just relocating the Neue Wache building from where I had it originally to its actual real life location, which is over here. When I first put it down in the other location, the wrong location, I didn't realize that this building actually existed here. Since it is, relatively small, I guess I was just installing random German buildings, anything that I could use, and it was small enough. I needed something small to fit in that little plaza area when I built it. So this was one of the few buildings that looked nice that I could, fit in there. But now that I, of course, know that it's actually over here in real life, I had to relocate it eventually, and now is that time. And I did make that little center hole in the roof, so the sun shines in on the little memorial monument on the inside. I wanted to add that fence there just to make it a little more defined, the hole, since it kind of looked as though, the asset looked as though the asset creator maybe accidentally missed out on, including part of the roof in his creation. Obviously, that's not the case, but it looked as though it was kind of accidental, that hole there. So I wanted to make sure that, adding a little fence there just kind of adds a little, more definition on that hole there, so it actually stands out as being intentional, which of course it is in real life. But I added a ton of trees, since that's how it is both today and it seems also back then. Just complete tree cover for almost around the entirety of the memorial building. And there were some other small little garden looking, I don't know if it's part of the memorial or something else in the area, but it's hard to tell, looking at the black and white aerial view. Of course, nothing's labeled either. And then today, looking at it, there's just some buildings here, which I kind of squished this little area a bit. Scaling isn't completely accurate, which is fine. Of course, I just wanted to get, most importantly, the new guard building, which of course I did. And then just had to squeeze in, just a couple buildings here, just to add something, converting that one to PO just to shrink it down ever so little, just so it fits in there a little better. But I do wish there was some more smaller, tall buildings, since there's a lot of small, short buildings, of course, but there's not a lot of small, tall buildings, like 45-degree or even 90-degree corner buildings. Most of them are at least 3x3 or larger. There's only a couple 2x2 ones, and they're pretty small as far as the height goes. So it'd be nice if there was some more taller small buildings, if you know what I mean. Just kind of fit in those small areas, since I don't want to keep reusing the exact same buildings over and over as I currently am. But maybe eventually some creators will get around to making some more variation in those smaller buildings, which would be nice. But this building here is, originally I'm totally blanking on the name of the building, but it was a perfectly square building, and it's the, I'm going to butcher this, but the Balkademi building. It doesn't exist anymore, at least not an actual building. I know there's a kind of fake facade of the original building that's there today, which is kind of silly. Either build something or don't, I guess. But yeah, I initially had it here. This building here in real life it says another history museum, I guess German historical museum is what it's called. But they're very similar buildings, just kind of square, and a small glass roof in the center. So since this area wasn't a complete square, as you can see, I just used that one building there. They're all the same, same textures and stuff, same in appearance, just to kind of make it completely look as though it's one building. And then I did want to add some sort of glass roof to it, so I just used, it was some vanilla building, like a shopping center or something, which, something that I would never ever use, I don't even think I've ever used it once in, the entirety of playing this game, even before I started modding it, since I think it is a European department store or something like that. But I just stole the top little sunroof thing here, and I initially kept it larger, but then I realized that looks kind of maybe too modern, I guess. So I did want to scale it down a bit to be more the accurate size of the glass roof as it was on the building today and back then. And then I did get rid of those white things that were on the roof, which were just the walls of those little buildings put together, and couldn't do it without ruining the actual roof. So I just added some surface textures there, and raised also the glass roof at the very end, just so it looks good. And I think it turns out cool. It looks like it's one building, looks like it's meant to be that way. And yeah, I guess that worked out. But anyways, that is it for today's episode, actually. Definitely glad to be back, and I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next week with the next episode.